Welcome to Branding on a Budget, a 5-part training webinar series brought to you by United Way of Northern Utah, KB Grants, and Ogden Downtown Alliance. My name is Danielle Collier and I am with KB Grants. I do nonprofit consulting and grant writing, and one of my biggest focuses is on marketing and communications. I work with United Way and they asked me to put together a training series, and so I brought in Haley Van Patten, who is with Ogden Downtown Alliance. We are here to talk a little bit more about marketing communications in the nonprofit sphere, and we've been able to rally 5 incredible local professionals to come bring some new insight and knowledge into each of our trainings.
So a little bit more about what to expect today from this training. So in a couple minutes we are going to jump into our presentation for you, and then after that we will have our pre-recorded interview with Mike McBride from Ogden City. He is our first special guest for the series, and then directly following that we will hop into our live Q&A with Mike, and that is where you can ask any additional questions. Please use the chat box below kind of as things come up through our presentation or through our interview with Mike. If things come into your mind, drop them in the chat and then we will facilitate that conversation at the end.
All right, so we're going to get started. So the main topic of today's training is assessing the current status of your marketing and communications plan. And the first step, especially as a nonprofit organization, is to consider and establish your why. So you have your mission statement and your focus. So what is your why? What is the meaning behind what you're doing? What are your goals? What is your passion? And why should people listen to what you have to say, or why should people support your organization? So when you're creating your marketing communications plan, it's important to consider your why and how your plan is answering back to that. Haley actually shared an awesome TED Talk with me. It's Simon Sinek's Start With Why, and we'll drop the link for you in the chat box. So if you're interested, watch that. I think it's about like 8 to 10 minutes, and it'll give you a little bit more information on starting with your why.
So now that you have established your why, we are going to move into connecting that why with the rest of your brand. So like Danielle mentioned, it's important to know why you're doing what you're doing as an organization, because that will affect essentially everything else. So what does your organization sound like, both in person and also online, also on paper, in any print materials that you're running? What does your organization look like? Do you have any logos, any colors that you use, any specific fonts? These are all pieces of your brand that will help kind of create that cohesive look, so that when you're pushing out communications material, whether it's on social media, via a newsletter, video, or print, everything will look the same, and when people see it, they'll know, oh, there's green, red, and this, and that's obviously this organization. So that will really help in creating a cohesive plan.
So the next part sounds a little intimidating. Conducting an audit, and no, we are not the IRS.
It's tax season. I'm kidding.
But it is important to create your own audit internally. So what you can do is you can consider, what are your platforms and your networks? What do you have to work with? What are you already working with, such as social media channels or websites? What do you have? Who has access to them? How often are you posting or utilizing them? And then what kind of content is being shared? And once you identify that, you can kind of think about what's missing. What is that gap in your messaging, and what platforms could you be using to fill that gap?
And once you know what platforms you're on and what platforms you need to be on, then you can kind of take stock of what assets you have or additional resources you have to create content or to fill those platforms. And this could be anything from, do you have access to free printing? Do you have access to space in your local newspaper or magazine? Do you have a newsletter going out? Do you have a photo gallery, a video gallery, video content already created? Do you have radio ads or an opportunity to pay for radio space? Things like that that could really add to your communications plan, just making sure that you have those assets accounted for. This is also important because sometimes we find ourselves recreating the wheel. You start working on a project and then you get 3 people in and they're like, oh, we already have that, or we already have this resource. So just making sure that you know what you have from the beginning, so that you can really dive into your comms plan and really make the most of what you have and utilize all of your resources.
And something that's important to go along with that would be knowing your audience. So who is your target audience? Who is your primary or ideal consumer of your services or your product or whatever that might be? And then considering what input could you get from these participants via surveying that could be beneficial in better knowing your audience. So making sure that you know what they're interested in, what they want to hear, how often do they want to hear from you? Are they interested more in visual campaigns or more informational campaigns? What questions do you need to be answering before you can define that? And then also considering who needs to be involved in creating your marketing and communications plan so that you have a wide array of people who can represent your target audience.
So once you know all of these things, you also want to make sure that you have a way to evaluate your efforts in place. And this might also sound intimidating. I know this is a lot of information all at once, but this could be something as simple as a shared Google sheet that just keeps track of your content calendar, what you're posting and how often, with a separate tab at the bottom full of your assets and things that you can be using as an organization. And it doesn't have to look nice, it doesn't have to be color-coded, it could be like a basic sticky note format list, but it's just nice to have those organizational tools in place to really help you stay on your goals, which we'll talk about later, and stay on your plan. And along with this, it's also important to really look at your insights and your engagement, especially when we're talking about digital communications with your digital newsletters or with social media content and with web traffic. You can dive into your Google Analytics to see who's clicking through your site. You can dive into your Facebook and Instagram insights, both of which are free, so you can kind of see the audiences that are engaging with you there, and then also just public comments in general, likes, dislikes, video views, things like that. That can speak volumes about how your content is performing and what people and what your audiences specifically want to know more about or what information they're gravitating towards. And then lastly, it's always good to just have a second pair of eyes, maybe another person from your department or just someone else from inside or even maybe outside your organization, just glance at your materials because they might catch something that you're missing. So it's important to just make sure that you have multiple eyes sometimes on those things.
So next up, we're going to start talking about goal setting.
We love an acronym. I don't know about anyone else here, but I'm a big fan of acronyms, and something that both Danielle and I actually remember from our time at Weber State University, great. It's the concept of SMART goals, and that's an acronym for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. And that might sound like a lot, but actually when you get into it, it's very easy to understand and also very effective when you're setting goals personally or for your organization. So one example of a SMART goal, just to kind of set the tone, for the Ogden Downtown Alliance, we set a goal for 2021 to grow our following on Instagram by 10% by November 1st. So as you can tell, that's a very specific goal and it is measurable. We can measure the success of that if we achieve that or not at the end. It's attainable. It's a small percentage that we can increase by. It's relevant because that's something that we need and are working towards is general overall growth online. And then it's time bound, so we gave ourselves that deadline of November 1st.
And it's important to create both short and long-term goals. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the difference and some opportunities there. So an example of a short-term goal would be have 50 RSVPs to attend our upcoming event on Facebook by March 15th. So you take that goal and you create action items. And then if you want to create steps to achieve those action items, you can always do that. So for example, going along with that example of a goal, some action items would be create vibrant, cohesive graphics to be used for promoting the event, join community pages and post about the event to engage new audiences, reach out to relevant community partners and ask them to share and promote the event for us, and create a targeted ad boosting the event to the Ogden area for $100. So those are just 4 action items that will help us achieve our goal of having 50 RSVPs to attend our upcoming event on Facebook by March 15th. And then if we want to, we can take those action items and create steps or divvy them out to our team members. And then long-term goals are a lot broader and they're more of like your dream or your vision, but you can also make them a little bit more specific if you create them for the year or the 5-year plan. And so an example of a goal would be have a monthly newsletter with at least 100 recipients and 25% open rate by September 1st. And then 3 action items for that could be survey community needs. What do people want to hear or learn about from your newsletter? Build a visually pleasing template and build an email list. And then again, you can create tasks for each of those and divvy them up between your team. So lastly, but not least, prioritizing. So making sure to set time aside each week to work towards or even just check in with the progress of your goals. How much time can you commit? 30 minutes, an hour, it doesn't matter, just make sure you're starting somewhere.
And last, but not least, no, I'm kidding. But we wanted to leave you kind of with your own action item, or I guess a piece of homework, you may say. We wanted to challenge everyone here to now practice goal setting. You don't have to do it right this second, but just with the information that you learned from us and that you will learn from our interview with Mike, really just leave this training and practice setting goals for either yourself in your role at your organization or your organization as a whole. So we would like to challenge each of you to set one short-term goal and one long-term goal that you would like to reach.
Thank you for joining for our little training overview of assessing your marketing and communications plan and goal setting. Next up, we have our interview pre-recorded on Zoom with Mike McBride from Ogden City. So please stay tuned for that. And then again, if you have any questions or anything that we spoke about you would like us to elaborate on, drop it in the comments section and we will be able to address those in the live Q&A after Mike's interview. All right, we are live from our own houses with Mike McBride with Ogden City Marketing and Communications. And Mike, your background's actually in large-scale event marketing and operations, right? In the nonprofit sector?
Yeah, that's right. I've been here with Ogden City for about 3 years, but prior to that, I was with the Gold Foundation, who's also an Ogden nonprofit. But what they do is they produce and support large-scale events in the Ogden area.
Awesome.
A good example of that would be the Ogden Marathon or Xterra. We've had plenty of USA Collegiate and USA National Championships come through. Really, anything that's kind of got a chance for camera and it's large scale and it's going to bring community members together. That's what the Gold Foundation did. All along, I've enjoyed doing that because really what I love about Ogden is Ogden itself as a product, where we're at in the world and the people that make up this community. So I'm really happy to be with Ogden City now.
Yeah, I was going to ask, so is that kind of what made you make the transition to Ogden City when it came available?
Yeah, for me, it was hard to leave the Gold Foundation because I really believe in what they do and enjoyed the connection to the community and the results of that. But what Ogden City represents to me is a combination of everything. It's nonprofits, businesses, it's the people that make up the fabric of this community. And when it all comes together, we really do live in a pretty special place.
So can you tell us a little bit more about what a day is like at Ogden City Marketing and Communications?
Yeah, sure. Like you said at the beginning, I'm the marketing and communication manager for Ogden City. Our team is, we're 3 people. Myself, we have a digital media producer, and we also have a communications assistant. And between the 3 of us, we take care of a wide variety of things here at the city, but really we have different client groups that we kind of focus on. We have 6 different departments in Ogden City, and that's everything from fire and police to public works, community and economic development, and the team that I work under is management services. And within all of those departments, there are several divisions, and a lot of times those folks might need help with public messaging or some form of public outreach to get information out into the community's hands. That's where we come in. We actually film videos for them. We write articles. We put information in newsletters and communication pieces that we have available. We also serve internal clients. So between departments, we want to help facilitate communication between So it might be in the form of a training video or a training manual. We facilitate all that type of activity. And I'd say lastly, what our key role is public information. So anything that we're trying to get out to the community or to say our business partners or community collaborators would come through our office, get pared down, edited, and then sent out for public consumption.
I see. Well, it sounds like a lot of work. What would you say is your favorite part?
Easily, hands down, it's collaboration and working with other people, and that could be working with folks in different divisions or working with, like yourself, people in the community. We absolutely love collaborating and being in the middle of what's going on so that we can connect dots and share information, that's relevant and current.
And that's how both Haley and I met you, was with working with Ogden Downtown Alliance and working on collaborative projects with the city too. So
in some fashion or the other, this community integrates in many ways, and it's a beautiful thing.
yeah, it's a larger community, but it feels very small.
You know, definitely we've all like come full circle. So thanks for sharing that background about your current position. And now let's kind of like get into the, I guess, advice section of this Q&A. So we have a variety of attendees that are on this webinar right now, and some of them might not have as much previous experience or any experience at all. So from you, what are some, I guess, beginner level marketing practices that you feel offer a high level impact that people could maybe implement in their own organizations?
Okay. I think I would start from a space where I believe that everybody that's watching this they have a business, or they're managing a business or a nonprofit, or or some organization like that. So I'll just believe that that's already in place. There's no vision of something that they're going to be doing potentially, but for folks that are in their day-to-day operations, I would say one thing that I would start with is optimizing your content on your website. And if you don't have a website, that should be one of your highest priorities. You need a place where people can go on their schedule to consume the information that you want them to see and have that available for them. But optimizing that content that's on your website is really important, because when people go out in the world and they do search for something the way that we all do, you go to Google and you look for a restaurant in Ogden, or you look for outdoor gear, or you might be looking for a set of tires, whatever it is. You want people to see your website when they search for that word on Google. And the best way to help make that happen without paying for it is to optimize the language on your website. So if you were to use the word, I just said tires, so we'll just say Falcon, because that's a tire brand. You'd want to make sure that you had words like that associated your website with that brand, so that people searching would come there. Another thing I would say is pick your platforms well. I know that there's so many ways that we can communicate with our customers or constituents. There's Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and 1,000 other things, besides your website that you, and blogs. Like, there's so many tactics for communicating that you could get lost in. I would say, don't try to be everything to everybody when it comes to picking your platform. Do good with the ones that you have. For us, we focus on 2. We have 3, but we focus on 2. I think that we've been really effective with Facebook and Instagram from the city perspective. And in my past life, with large scale events and goal, that's what we focused on as well. But I would say that it could be detrimental to what you're trying to accomplish if you can't be concise and exact with the message you're trying to get to your people, and doing it on a regular basis. And like I said, one thing that I would recommend is just pick your platform and do it well.
So with that, do you have any like go-to apps or things that you use to like help you stay organized on those platforms? Or you talked about like optimizing the language on your website. So do you have any like resources online that you kind of use to gain that knowledge? Or was that like, how did you, I guess, learn about all of that yourself?
At the city, we have some tools that we use that, I mean, they come at a cost, and
Mhm.
you know, we use those tools here. We have a proprietary product that we use on our website, and much like Google Analytics, our proprietary software helps us understand what our search engine optimization is doing. If we have broken links, all this type of thing. But I would definitely encourage everybody to take themselves through their customer journey. If you can't afford software that does the tricks for you, I would say put yourself in their shoes and take yourself through the customer journey, and find out if you enjoyed your experience, right? So if you're trying to get somebody to come eat at your restaurant, and the way that you're doing that is pinging their interest on Facebook, they click it, then they end up at your website, and you want them to come to your menu, and all of a sudden you find out that your menu is not coming up the way that you thought it would. That's something that you can fix, right? Putting yourself in your customer's shoes and finding out if you enjoy that experience is a really important step for any business manager or business owner to do.
Going back to the kind of theme of this training in strategic planning and marketing and communications, obviously you're the manager, so you have two people that you work with frequently, and so you all reference some kind of a marketing and communications plan. And I guess one of our questions is what would you recommend to anybody either starting to build a marketing and communications plan, or even just reviewing their marketing and communications plan? What would you recommend them make sure that they have included?
That's great. We have a 5-year strategic plan here that we reference often in our department. And this year has been kind of funny because we had to pivot and shift a little bit, just like everybody else has had to. But in a normal environment where you're able to focus on that strategy and really double down on it, I would say some key points to having a marketing strategy in place would be: first, know yourself. What is it that you offer? What's the product or service or experience that you want to share with your customers, with your patrons? Within that, you want to know who your competition is, and maybe even as deep as, like, what's your unique value proposition? What sets you apart from other people that may have a similar product or service or experience, so that you can then highlight what that unique value proposition is, and why you think that you should engage with your audience differently than your competition. Secondly, I'd say, like, know your audience, right? And a question that you should ask them is, what matters to them? What are they looking for, so that you can double down your focus and really answer that question. Find out what it is they're looking for, and if there's a hole in your business plan or in your marketing plan that maybe needs to be identified and dealt with. I think that one great strategy in doing that is ask your customers to leave a review, and do it everywhere, and ask them to leave an honest review. You want to hear about it if you're using Facebook, do it on Facebook. Of course, on Google. If it's on Yelp, do it on Yelp. But once you ask them to leave a review, be sure that you listen to it authentically and genuinely, and hopefully take action to do that like 5-star review again and do it better, or else solve the problem that they experience. Because really, at the end of the day, you want your customers to share their positive experience or positive product that you're selling with their friends, so that you build your customer base and have more sales. And I would say after that, like, know your objectives. And of course, like, to do that, you can interview your staff, interview customers, interview key partners, figure out what your objectives are and stick to them. And I'd say those are probably like 4 good starting points for a good marketing plan.
Definitely. I like that you mentioned asking the audience questions and kind of adapting to their answers. What are some questions that you would recommend we ask ourselves internally with our organization to help us in planning our next steps?
I think one question that I ask myself regularly is, am I delivering current and relevant content to my audience? You know, our title here, and it's different for everybody. I understand that some folks they might have a retail storefront, but in our world, we're in communications. I would say 80% of the time, our role is communications. And so we ask ourselves on a regular basis, are we delivering relevant and current content? Is it timely? Is it answering the questions that our audience has? Basically, is it meeting their needs? I think that everybody can ask themselves that question. Are we meeting our customers' needs and expectations? And those are probably 2 questions that we could start our day off with.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely think that that's great. And you mentioned that you have a 5-year strategic plan, yes, for your marketing and communications. So how do you kind of evaluate that plan to make sure it's effective? Do you have any like assessment tools that you use, or how and how often do you check in with that plan to make sure that it's working to your needs?
The strategic plan should be, for us, our benchmark is every 2 years. So in a 5-year plan, we're looking at that strategy every 2 years to make sure that it's still on pace with what we set out to do originally. And like I mentioned, this year it's been really unique. We had to completely shift our focus. You know, normally we focus on our residents here in Ogden. That's who we speak to mostly, but we also want to reach people along the Wasatch Front. And we're not just talking about like residents along the Wasatch Front. We're talking about businesses and potential maybe talent that would choose to come live in Ogden to work for a business here.
Mhm.
Those are the audiences that we are looking at. And a way that you can gauge, you know, if you're doing well, for us, we look at market reaction, trying to see if anybody's copying what we're doing, or if we're getting radio silence, because, you know, both of those mean something. You know, if you're getting a reaction online, for us, we focus a lot on our earned media. We're constantly pitching stories or ideas to the media that would get us essentially, hopefully, coverage on news channels or in publications that really costs, you know, not much more than the time that it takes to share those experiences. So market reaction is one. Another one would be customer response. And again, we can go back to reviews or feedback that you're getting on a survey. You know, I think that it's important to survey your people. For businesses that have, you know, customers coming in in a different way that we do, I would say try to build your database, you know, because once you have a good database, there are so many powerful things that you can do with that database. One is reach out to them directly and ask them how you're doing. I mean, they're your customer. They've spent dollars with you, or they've engaged with you for a reason, and you want to find out how you're doing. And that doesn't always necessarily mean it's like a Google review, like I said, or a Yelp. You know, it could be a survey response. The other part of that is you want to, you know, ask them just basic questions while you're doing it and get a good customer response, right? So communication is always a two-way street, and you can't just push. You always want to hear back, because that's really how you learn and grow.
Definitely. So internally as a staff, do you have like weekly marketing meetings or like a check-in point for I think you said 3 of you, where you can touch base on these things? Or how much time do you put in as a group kind of going over these goals and kind of strategies and things like that?
Yeah, I think in a lot of businesses, there are things that are cyclical. So an example of that for us would be we have a newsletter that goes out monthly, or we have a magazine that we push out quarterly. those two things have to happen on a regular basis, and they happen on a timely basis. And so we visit those weekly as a staff. And so in the scheme of things here in my job, we're a department or a division, I'm sorry, and there's 3 of us. And then I work with a department that has 7 other like managers like myself. And I make sure that the work that we're doing is in line with their goals and objectives, because we all want to work together and understand how the city is moving through projects or service problems or whatever it might be. You know, it might be like resident engagement or a 311 type of situation where, I don't know, potholes or whatever it might be. But yes, and then even at a senior management level, we always try to incorporate communication all the way through the organization to make sure that the left hand and the right hand really are talking and communicating with each other and really understand what's happening.
Talking about goal setting, do you have any general advice or anything that you try to keep into consideration when you're making goals?
When you talk about goal setting, I think a really basic goal setting method is the SMART method. And folks out there might not know what that is, but that means specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. So all of those things can help you make a goal that should be something with a positive outcome at the end of it. And I think that if you can say, is it specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based? Like if you can answer all of those questions, then your goal is probably something that you're gonna see through. For us, we place a really high priority on public outreach. Okay, so and being able to reach the general public quickly and in an effective way is really important for us. And so we try to grow our audience, and that's been a goal that we've set from day one here with me. We wanted to find ways to reach our audience in an effective and consistent way. And last year we were able to nearly triple our online audience. And that was through daily and weekly activity that had a variety of engagements, and then utilizing the tools that are free to us through this owned media channel. So Facebook is an owned media channel for us. Our website is an owned media channel. It's content that we can control. And I think that's important for any business owner, nonprofit manager to understand. This is a free way for you to communicate. And if you can expand your audience and grow that audience, then you're gonna reach more people and realize more success. And also, once you dive into the realm of, we have another guest speaker coming up, I believe next month, who will talk about digital media, and I'm sure she'll dive into this strategy. But anytime you can grow your database, you can actually grow your online audience as well, and through lookalike audiences and interest-based audiences. And anytime you can do that, you're going to reach more people and be able to more effectively get your message out.
What would you say is like a success story of a SMART goal that you've attained at Ogden City or at Goal Foundation?
I use SMART here on a regular basis. And like I said, last year we set out to increase our audience. And when you talk about that, it's specific is the first thing. And we wanted to double our audience. And at the time, going from 10,000 followers to 20,000 followers, it felt daunting. That's a huge growth percentage. And in a city of 80,000 people, we're talking about, potentially grabbing a large percentage of that population. Now, not everybody that's following us is from Ogden. They might be from like the greater Ogden area, Weber County, and maybe like even beyond Salt Lake. There's been some events and they're wonderful things, but events that have drawn people to follow us, which have fed that, and you can't always, like, I'll never accept the full, the full gratitude of that happening, because I think that it takes so many factors to realize your goal this way. But we tripled our audience through creating a SMART goal last year, and it was through a variety of tactics that we used through our social media channels. And here we are today. Now we can reach more people, and hopefully it's always with, like positive news and engaging experiences and things to share in our community. But in the event that we ever have to talk about emergency operations or something that happens in our city, we want to be prepared for that too.
Yeah, and you'll have a larger reach. That's awesome.
Mhm.
Well, congratulations. That's a huge feat.
Well, thank you to everyone who is currently watching this right now. And if you're not aware, right after this, we're going to jump into our live Q&A portion, and Mike will be sticking around for that. So right now, we are just going to ask you if you have any final thoughts or pieces of advice that you would like to offer to the group before we move into that.
I think one point, and I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about this. It's the X factor for marketing and communications, and for us, the X factor is our relationships and the collaboration that we share in the community. I think that every nonprofit and I think that every industry can benefit from hip checking, if you will, with like-minded organizations and people that are moving in the same direction as them, to find out, like what's trending in the industry, right? What's working for you or what's not. Or in our case, we want to work with organizations like the United Way of Northern Utah, like the Ogden Downtown Alliance, School Foundation, and so many other nonprofits that I can't mention right now, to help our community move in the right direction. I definitely believe that a rising tide lifts all the ships in the harbor, the whole JFK statement. I believe that with all of my heart. And I've had over the course of my career in marketing and communications, I've had the benefit of working with some really great mentors. The one person in particular who was also not just a mentor, but a business owner on 25th Street, said something that was so profound to me, and I'll never forget it, and I live by it. She said, just show up. And I believe that. So in Ogden, we've been on national lists of places that have the best volunteerism and the best, the highest rate of giving out of all the cities in the country. And that pesky Provo every once in a while nudges us out. But, to be in the top two, the top two most charitable communities for all of these years, I think it means a lot, and it says a lot about the people of this community. And really what it all boils down to is people show up and we help each other, and we do what we need to make everything work together. All the cylinders are firing, right? That's how this engine works really well. And particularly within a city. Ogden was recently noted as one of the top 10 cities, or top 10 best performing cities on the Milken Institute report, which it's a nationally ranked report that's recognized widely. They're not selling anything. It's I think it's an accolade that we should all be proud of. And the reason that Ogden is on that is because all of our cylinders are firing the way that they should, and it's a result of people showing up for each other and supporting local, and really doing business and doing community the right way. And I would love to make it a point that the X factor matters when you're in marketing and when you're in sales. Show up for your community, support your neighbors, and help each other like rise in the harbor.
Mm-hmm.
We appreciate you being here, and we're excited to see what questions the audience has for you. So
thanks for having me. It's a real honor and privilege to be on a panel with so many other people that I highly respect and admire in this community, and I'm looking forward to watching theirs as well.
Up. Hi, everyone. Hopefully you can hear us okay. Thank you so much for sticking around to watch that video. And we're going to hop into the Q&A now. So we got a couple questions throughout our portion and throughout the presentation. And Danielle is here with me, squeezing into the same screen. So she's going to go ahead and read some of those out. And then her, myself, and Mike will answer those accordingly. If anything else pops into your head, feel free to drop it in the chat box. So take it away, Danielle.
Perfect. So our first question is for Mike. Mike, do you want to join us on video?
I think he's.
Hello?
There you
Hi.
are. I love that we're matching.
I know we all kind of got the color scheme here,
I
unplanned.
got the memo.
So our first question is from Clarice, and she's wondering, there are so many social media platforms to choose from, such as TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and just so many to name. In your opinion, what is the best way to know where you should have a presence and where to spend your energy? So how to kind of like prioritize those pieces.
Great. I used to work with Clarice, and Clarice is actually one of the guest speakers on this panel coming up here in maybe a couple months. I'm looking forward to hearing from her also. So Clarice, I think what I would suggest or recommend when it comes to the whole broad spectrum of social media channels that are out there and the availability is, I would lean towards where I know that I could engage the largest audience on a regular basis. And like I said in the interview, for the city, that has been Facebook and Instagram. I think that whenever you look at any like a national reporter ranking, those are going to be two of the highest used social media channels that are out there. You know, of course, Twitter's coming up, and then a ton of people use TikTok. But another thing I would consider when I'm selecting a social media channel to use is the tone of the conversation that you're having with your audience, and that tone's very different when you look at TikTok, for example, versus Twitter. Where you're getting really quick facts from Twitter maybe, and then TikTok might be a little more entertaining. And I think that there's always good use for both. But really, at the end of the day, you want to have social media channels that you're able to build your audience. You can evaluate that through that social media channel's insights panel. Most of them have reports that let you know who's engaging and how you're doing. And then at the end of the day, just evaluate if you have time to manage 1, 2, 10 of them. If you have somebody that can do 10, then bless you. That's way more than I have the ability or bandwidth to do. But that's where I would come from. I don't know, Haley, Danielle, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree with what you said about the tone of like the conversation and the information. Something for us here at the Ogden Downtown Alliance. So we manage several different platforms. One of them is Historic 25th Street. We also have Farmers Market, the Nine Rails Creative District, and then our ODA brand at large. And so all of those tones are very different and those conversations are very different. And the groups of people that are engaging in those platforms are different. So for our Farmers Market account, Instagram works much better because we have a younger audience that's very interested in farmers markets and yoga and clean eating and that kind of lifestyle and environment. But then for our like main ODA content, sometimes it's honestly Facebook that's better because we have an older audience engaging with us there. So really just, I guess, bringing it back to the knowing your audience piece and where they're engaging, because it might differ based on the platform, or if you're talking to multiple stakeholders, it might differ there as well.
Definitely. I agree with both of you. We have kind of a follow-up question to that from Heather. And Heather's asking, I know you guys probably can both chime into this. What is the best way to get consumer involvement in your social media? So how do we go about increasing engagement?
I can kind of start that one because this is a conversation that we had recently, but something that we try to focus on is making sure that your consumers or that the public see themselves in your marketing and in your brand, and they see where they fit into your mission, kind of taking it back to letting people know your why and having them buy into why you do what you do, not just what you do and how you do it. So that's something that we focus on, is really what information are we trying to put out there, but then how does this pertain to our audience, and where can they see themselves and fit themselves into this messaging? And that could even be something as small as a graphic, like what images are you using, and are those inclusive to your audience and to the populations that you're trying to reach? If they can see themselves in those images or in the language that you're using, then they are more likely to, in my opinion, engage with your content, and that's what's worked for us. So I don't know if either of you have anything else to add.
And it's kind of just like when you consider like conducting an interview, are the questions that you're putting out on social media, are they qualitative or quantitative? Are they going to like spark a conversation? Is somebody going to feel the need to respond to what you posted? Are you asking questions to try and get them involved in your content? Mike, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I do. I think Jackson Bedeau may have had, I believe it was Jackson that had the question about the narrow age range of your audience and maybe broadening that. I would recommend within those social media channels, some of them have the ability to use, a variety of tactics. It's not just always a post and a picture, or it's not necessarily like sharing a website or an information link that may take them somewhere external. I think when you start to practice these different ways to reach an audience, you're going to find that certain content will engage with groups differently, and you can begin to adjust your posting habits accordingly. So you may find that taking somebody externally is not always the best idea, because said platform may throttle that back and not give you the audience that you're looking for. I would try live broadcasts, kind of like what we're doing here. You'll get more people following and watching and engaging. And then again, I believe that communication is always a two-way street, and any time your audience wants to ask you a question, really, I think you should take your best chance at trying to answer that honestly and in a timely way. And hopefully you'll grow your audience that way.
Yeah, that's great. So Kaylin had a question. What are some design tools, websites that I can use to design posts and ads? And I primarily use Canva. It's basically just like a lot simpler, user-friendly version of InDesign or Illustrator, right? And there's actually, I'm going to post in the link in the chat box right now. If you're a nonprofit organization, you can get a free, like all-inclusive account on Canva. And that's a tool that I would definitely recommend utilizing. And I don't know if you guys use anything different, but.
I've used the Adobe platforms in the past. I've used InDesign, Illustrator, Photoshop, all of those. But again, those do come at a cost usually. So maybe check the rates on those. But also we've kind of shopped around for local graphic designers as well. Obviously, this is branding on a budget. And so if you don't have any budget, or if you have a small budget, that might not work for you, or it might, but there are a lot of really talented local artists here in the Ogden area and in the greater Ogden area that might have lower rates as well, or they're just looking for work to help them get started. So we've definitely shopped around to some of those people as well to figure out how we can use local artists in our marketing. But outside of that, we also primarily use Canva and then some of the Adobe suites. So
we have a question here from Kelly Wickens. In the COVID environment, how have you changed or adapted your communication strategies or plans? Or has it been operations as normal? And Mike, I'll let you take this one, because you told us about how it's been a little tricky to have to like pivot and adapt to this crazy time trying to get out that public information.
Right. I don't, there's probably not a person here that hasn't had to change their plans this year and really, adapt to what was given us. And for the city, we have a strategy, and it's to reach a broad audience along the Wasatch Front and in our residents. And like I mentioned in the interview, we have more audiences than that. But in this environment with coronavirus, and pandemic and that whole thing, the risk of our normal marketing strategy, the risk would have been to appear tone deaf and really not aware of what's happening in the world, because the idea is to bring people to town, come visit us, come eat at our restaurants, come shop here, do business with us, come move here. And, we don't, in COVID, we couldn't shout that from the rooftop. We would have just appeared completely disconnected. And so what we did, and I'll just give you an example, last year is we really recognized that, that our downtown businesses and restaurants, were slowing down. It's because people they weren't allowed to visit in person. And so we shifted our marketing efforts to focus on mainly residents or people, in a certain geographic area, where we could get a message to them that, hey, these places are open, order and get curbside. And really we had like millions of impressions through our marketing campaign that we ran for about 3 months. And we did it in a way that, that was in tune with current events and, in the current situation and status of what's happening in our downtown. I think that it doesn't matter if it's COVID or if it's something else. I mentioned this, but you always want to see what's happening in your market and pay attention to customer response. And I think you can always make good decisions. And here's one last thing, and everybody knows it. You always have a plan, and that's a great thing, but you should always plan to change it. So pay attention to what's happening in your market. And if you need to change your plan, that's totally okay. Shift and grow.
Definitely. And to add to that, from the Ogden Downtown Alliance side, something as we pivoted our efforts that we tried to remember was just the timeliness of our messaging in the time of COVID, and really trying to put ourselves in the business owner and the community shoes. And anytime that we would receive new information, we were really trying to be as timely as possible on the turnaround time of giving that information back out to our audiences. And then also just keeping transparency, especially as we were navigating larger events and district meetings or gatherings, or people coming to restaurants or shopping local as people started to reopen over the summer. Like really just being as transparent as possible and saying, this is the information we have at this time. We've been in the conversation with Ogden City and with our local health department, just making sure that people don't feel like you're necessarily hiding things or that you're beating around the bush, so to say. I'm just really trying to keep their trust in that messaging as well.
And if you'd like to, I can also type in right now our emails as well. If you have a follow-up question, you're welcome to reach out to any of us. Yes. And we can answer those for you. I'll put those in right now for you.
And like we said, we did record this webinar, and we will be recording the other ones in this series as well. So you will have access to watch those after this ends. If you had to leave and then come back, or if you have a coworker that you feel like this information could benefit, we will have that available to you. So thank you so much for joining us. And Mike, thank you again for being in the recorded part and then sticking around for the live part. It's been really nice talking with you again. And thank you to United Way as well for putting this on for us.
Yes, United Way has been an incredible partner to work with, and they're the reason we were able to make this happen. So we're super excited for the next 4 ones. And we have to say a big thank you to Mike for really kicking it off.
Yes.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. I have a ton of respect for everybody that's on this panel, and you and Haley and your organizations. And I looking around this screen, it's actually really humbling. I see people that represent the U.S. Forest Service, folks that are doctors in the community, folks with podcasts. It's really nice to see so many different folks around here that we respect. And me being in marketing, I can't get away from a captive audience like this without saying one thing that's really cool that's happening this week in Ogden. We are breaking ground on the Dumpke Arts Plaza right behind the hotel. That's happening Friday. And everybody on the screen can join virtually on Facebook/Ogden City Arts. We're doing that at noon on Friday. It is going to be an incredible space. We're all going to benefit from it for years to come. I'm looking forward to that.
I'm so excited.
It's been, in the works for quite a while. Back when I worked at Ogden Downtown Alliance and we were working on the 9 Rails Creative District, that was just a dream. So we're super excited. Yeah, we love a good plug. We love a plug. So that is awesome. And we have to give another plug. Our next one coming up is going to be maximizing digital reach with Angel Castillo, another local professional. And so we're excited for that one as well. And just so you all know, we will be sending out with United Way of Northern Utah a follow-up kind of informational survey so we can gain feedback on this training and trying to make the next 4 even better for you. So please take a second when you get our follow-up email to fill out that survey and let us know what you thought.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much again for being here, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you at our next training.
Yep. Bye, you guys. Thank you.